I think this is one of those videos where I'm going to film it, I'm going to post it, and I will not be at all surprised if I lose a handful of subscribers by posting this, or maybe more than a handful of subscribers by posting this. I have the feeling this one isn't going to make people happy, but I think it will give you food for thought, and it might enlighten some of you, and it might shake some of you out of pre-existing assumptions about how men and women interact. And so that could be beneficial to people, and so I'm willing to make this video. And also, I'm just annoyed. So right off the bat, let's make it official. I am pregnant. Please do not congratulate me on getting pregnant. I've been trying to get pregnant for the last 2 years. I've been trying to have a baby for the last 3 years. And my last two pregnancies have been pretty disastrous. One more so than the other. We won't get into that here. But yeah, do not congratulate me. If it's been a few months that this video's been up and you notice that I'm saying I'm pregnant, go to my other videos and check and see whether or not the baby actually made it before you congratulate me. I feel kind of guilty. I'm getting congratulated every once in a while for my last pregnancy, and the baby's been dead for months now. And so I'm not trying to be morbid or anything. It's just these things don't always work out. And the last couple times I've tried, they haven't worked out. I'd love to think this one's going to work out. And I feel kind of optimistic sometimes. Like I have days, I have entire days where I feel optimistic about this one. But again, I don't know if he's going to make it. So I think it's a he so far. All signs point to a he so far. I'm going to be able to get a better feel for it in, a month or two. In a month or two, I'll be sitting there saying, I'm definitely certain it's a boy or a girl. I'm pretty sure he feels like a boy so far, but, we'll find out. We'll find out. We'll find out. Until then, I am on a hormone roller coaster. And so for the last 2 weeks, I found out about 2 weeks ago that I was pregnant, and I was going to do a video announcing it, but I was really tired. I was really moody. I really just wanted to sit on the couch and eat pickles and watch baby videos and cry. And so that's who I am. I've been possessed. I've been taken over by this strange woman who eats lots of pickles and cries all the time and gets really, really grumpy because pregnant me is a very grumpy person. And so I've been like super grumpy all the time. It's really annoying. And so everything that doesn't normally annoy me all that much, where it's like, oh, okay, whatever, life sucks. Everything, like all these little tiny details that never really bothered me all that much, all of a sudden it's like, okay, I'm seeing red and I am losing my mind. And for the most part, it's not that big a deal. My kids aren't really bearing the brunt of it. My husband isn't getting too much of it. But that guy in the car in front of me on my way to drop the kids off at school, the one who's going like 7 miles under the speed limit, that dude is gonna die, man. I'm losing my shit. I can't stay calm. I'm like ready to start pounding on the horn. It's like, just go. I just don't have the sense of calm that I used to. So it's been interesting. And I remember at this one point I was talking to this guy. He was a psychologist, and he was telling me about how people kind of have two modes that they operate on. They have like an emotional mode, and they have a logical mode, and they kind of it's like having two different operating systems, and usually one's in charge and the other one's kind of taking a back seat, and you can kind of flip them back and forth. And I think a lot of guys in the manosphere know this because they've got this idea that, men primarily run on logic and women primarily run on emotion. And this is true. You have your primary, your main driving system, but every once in a while you can flip over. And I've seen that because interacting with people in the manosphere, I've had the chance to interact with a lot of men, and I've seen men acting just purely on emotion. So it's like, okay, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter what your gender is. It doesn't matter what your political affiliations are. There are still going to be people, regardless of gender, political affiliation, what have you, who are going to be running on emotion versus running on logic. And there are some women who run on logic more. And just because your dominant, stronger suit is emotion, or just because your stronger suit is logic, that doesn't mean you aren't flipping back and forth every once in a while. So for example, cooking a recipe, like baking something, is not a very emotionally driven kind of activity. It's much more a logic driven kind of activity. Like, okay, I have to measure this. Okay, now I have to go measure this. Okay, well, now I have to go mix this up. And you're not really thinking emotionally. I mean, you might think emotionally. You might flip over to emotional if, like, for example, say you accidentally spill your giant bowl of whatever you're mixing. But, you know, it's a very feminine activity, like baking a cake. Not to say that men don't bake cakes, but, you know, just baking something in your kitchen. It's a very feminine activity, but it's a very logical kind of, you know, this is how things work. This is what you're doing. You're putting the thing with the thing. You're doing the thing. You're not emoting. You're not emoting. So even though people have their kind of dominant tendency, which is, you know, either emotional or logical, you're still flipping back and forth. Me, get me pregnant, and I'm just totally flipped over the emotional side, and it's very difficult for me to disconnect from that just really, really emotional side of myself in order to think clearly, which is incredibly annoying. And so I'm gonna make this video, and I'm gonna try, because I think this one could actually be interesting. So I got this message last week from this guy, just kind of out of the blue. He was commenting on a video I made a long time ago, and it was a story that I had told about an interaction that I had with a man when I was like 20-ish. And he starts off by telling me he thinks I'm a liar. And that's like my biggest pet peeve to begin with. Like, I hate being called a liar because I work very, very hard to be as honest as possible in my videos. And so when someone walks up and calls me a liar, it's like, you know all that hard work you've been doing? Screw that hard work you've been doing. And the other thing about being called a liar is that it doesn't matter how logical you are. It doesn't matter how well-reasoned your arguments are. It doesn't matter how clearly you put things in order and have like a logical progression from point A to point B to point C. Like, this is how we have this all set up. This is why this fits together the way it does. If someone calls you a liar, they can just take out any piece of your argument that they want to and throw it over their shoulder and say, okay, this is how things really work. Because you were lying here, or you were lying there, you were lying with the other thing. Like, I hate lying because you can't make a solid argument if you're lying. Nothing is solid anymore. Everything is just up on end and disorganized, and oh god, I hate the disorganization of it all. It's very annoying. And everything is annoying to me right now because I'm pregnant, so Anyway, so this guy right off the bat tells me he thinks I'm a liar. It's like, okay, great, I love you already. You're just such a wonderful person. And then he tells me that I need to apologize to all of you. Everyone watching this video, I need to apologize. I need to tell you how sorry I am for something. And the thing I need to tell you all I'm sorry about is this situation, this interaction I had with this guy that I told the story about in that video. And so my first response is, I'm not a liar, and I'm definitely not going to apologize. And we go back and forth at it a bit, and we had a very interesting discussion, and I finally concluded that this guy's probably insane. But that was my conclusion at the time. I still kind of hold on to it. It's like, the only people I've ever known who go to people and then demand that they publicly apologize are like SJWs, and it never ends well. So, like, who in their right mind is going to apologize because of what some stranger on the internet thinks they should do? Like, especially when they don't really have any idea clearly what they did wrong to begin with. Anyway, let's get into the story of the thing that I did, this horrible, awful, heinous thing that I did that I should be apologizing for. And maybe you watching this video will be of the opinion that I should apologize, but let's lay out all the details here and talk about what happened, and talk about what I think happened, and talk about why I think there are so many people who feel like I am either lying about certain elements of the situation, or that I'm refusing to apologize because the apology thing is really kind of a recent development. Most guys just tell me I'm lying. And there's a funny thing that happened when all this was going on. Like, right away early in the conversation, I got really annoyed at this guy because he's rehashing the same old arguments that guys have given me again and again and again about this. This is another of that list of things that's been annoying me lately. I was like, why are we talking about this all over again? I thought this was something that we dealt with in the comments section like 1,000,000 times already. He's like, not that many people mentioned it. And so I went into the comments section and I looked at my comments. I don't know how many of you have taken the time to like read through my comment section in the past, but my comment section has changed dramatically. That effing thing has turned into a gigantic hug box. I don't know what happened. I haven't been paying attention to, like, I don't go over and read all of my old comments. But oh my god, have things gotten really happy-go-lucky in there. Like, all the really, really crappy things people were saying to me, they've just vanished. They're gone. They're gone. All the times that people were saying horrible things to me in that video's comment section, they're gone. They're gone. It's all just nice, happy, fluffy things. And I'm looking at it like, what the hell? So then I went over to the video where I was talking about paternity fraud because a lot of people accused me of sleeping around and cheating on my husband. And I was like, okay, that one was spicy. So if I go over there and the comments section is turned into a hug box, I can pretty well assume that all of my comments sections have turned into hug boxes. Like all my video comments are a hug box now. And I went over to the paternity fraud videos, and sure enough, there's like only one guy left, and this is a recent guy, accusing me of cheating on my husband. And I was like, what the hell? So, here's the problem with that. Just because all those comments have been deleted, that doesn't mean that I didn't get those comments. That doesn't mean I wasn't arguing with the people who were saying these things to me. It doesn't undo everything people said at me at the time that these videos were posted. So as nice as it is for YouTube to kind of just go through and sweep clean all the nasty things that people were saying to me at that time, it doesn't change the fact that all these people were saying these really crappy things to me. And so when I get irritable about things, when I get grumpy, all of a sudden I seem like a crazy person for being grumpy about this stuff because people go into my comments section and they see nothing but a giant hug box. It's like, well, everybody loves you. Why are you so grumpy? You know, can't you just take criticism? It's like, no, you don't understand. You were the 95th person who's told me this. Oh, wait. There's no evidence of that. Except for the fact that when things got really weird, I'd take a screenshot. I'm pretty sure that's not actually how human biology works, but, oh well. Anyway, so that's another thing that happened recently that was just annoying. It's like, okay, so I can't go back through all the old conversations that I've had with people regarding this situation with this gentleman that I had this issue with. All I can say is that there were, at one point in time, multiple people complaining about the fact that I had this particular interaction with this gentleman. That being said, all that aside, let's talk about the actual interaction with the actual gentleman. So I met this guy one night, and I asked him to hang out with me after the club closed. And he agreed. And so the two of us, like, he was pretty cool. He seemed like a pretty cool guy. He was fun to talk to. So after the club closed, the two of us went out to Denny's because there really weren't any places to go at 1 o'clock in the morning. The club closed at 1. Everything in town was shut down. It was a really small town. And so the only place to really hang out was Denny's. I had an apartment, but obviously I was going to take him to my apartment when I first met him. And he did not have an apartment in that town. So he lived pretty darn far away. And so we ended up going to this little Denny's that was open all night. And we hung out, and we drank coffee, and we got some food, and we just sat and nibbled and chatted, and we had a pretty decent time of it. And so I think that at the end of that conversation, the exchange was something along the lines of, hey, this was fun, we should do it again, or something like that. I think at some point we exchanged phone numbers, and we ended up going out and hanging out again. And we did this, I don't know how many times, several times over the next, few months. We would just kind of meet up and hang out and talk, and things were pretty cool. He seemed like a pretty okay guy. He wasn't particularly interesting to me, he was just a guy, but he was, fun, and he seemed happy enough to hang out with me. And I had some issues I was going through at that point in my life where it was like, I was still kind of recovering from the things that had happened to me when I was a kid. And so that was kind of my primary focus. It's like, okay, you need to get off your butt, and you need to get out of your apartment, and you need to interact with another human being and be social. You need to switch up your routine. You need to talk to somebody. You need to practice these things, and you need to go out and be social. Because my big problem at that point in my life, and even to this day, I really self-isolate. And I know it's not a good thing, and it's a really bad habit, and it's really hard to break. It's very difficult for me to motivate myself to interact with other people. I'm reclusive, and it's unhealthy. Like there's normal reclusiveness where it's like, hey, I like being on my own, but everything's okay. And then there's unhealthy reclusiveness where it's like, I realize that I'm not being a healthy person. Which is something interesting to take in mind, because I think when a lot of guys talk about mental illness in women, a lot of them, at least in the manosphere, are talking about borderline personality disorder, which, let's face it, that's the mental illness you guys need to be kind of aware of. It's like, that's the one that's really going to hurt you. But that's not the only kind of mental illness that can develop in women. And so for me, the problem was that I was extremely socially anxious, and I was extremely nervous around people, and I was extremely avoidant of people. So when I met someone to hang out with, I was like, hey, this is good. I should be doing this for my own health and well-being, so I will continue doing this for my own health and well-being. So that's what I was doing. We're meeting up, we're hanging out, time's passing, and then one day we get onto the subject of how much does a prostitute cost? Like, I can't remember what I was talking about. I think I was talking about, like, one of the girls at work was a prostitute or something like that. Like, we all kind of knew that she was doing stuff that she shouldn't be doing, but nobody was actually saying anything, and there was nothing overt going on, but, like, we all knew. I ran into one of her Johns one night, and he was trying to upgrade, because she was kind of not the youngest girl, and she's kind of not the prettiest girl, and that's probably why she was prostituting herself out, because, you know, she needed money, and that was how she was getting it. And so she was basically using the club as a front for her business, because she wasn't earning a lot of money through the club. But anyway, I was waiting for my taxi, and he was waiting for her to get out of the changing room, and he kept on asking me how much money it would take for me to go back to his hotel with him, and I kept saying no, and he kept raising the price, and I kept saying no. Like, will you just take the hint? I'm not gonna fucking give you anything for money. That's not my job. And then thank God my taxi arrived. But like, yeah, he was waiting for her, and he wasn't particularly quiet about the fact that he was waiting for her. So I mean, we all kind of knew. So anyway, we're talking about, you know, I think I mentioned something, and he just sprang right on that, like, oh, really? How much does a prostitute go for? And I was like, oh, well, you know, I mean, it varies. I don't really know the prices, because I'm not in the business, so I don't know how it goes. I've heard rumors about this. I've heard rumors about that. I've heard rumors that, you know, 500-ish is the going rate in some areas. He was like, 500. I was like, you know, that's what I've heard. I don't know how true it is, because I'm not in the business. That's not my thing. And he was like, well, you know, I've spent about $500 in meals so far, so you owe me sex. And I was like, that's funny. No, go fuck yourself. And he's like, no, you owe me sex. Like, I've spent the $500, so you gotta pay up your end. I was like, absolutely not. I'm not gonna sell myself for, you know, a bunch of hamburgers. And I'm sitting there trying to do the math in my head in the meantime, like, okay, how many dollars is it for a meal? How many meals have we had? I'm pretty sure it's not a full 500, but I haven't been keeping track of the number at this point, so what the fuck? Let's see. So I brought a coffee with each meal, or, you know, sometimes a hot chocolate. That costs a little bit of money. Sometimes I'd spend money on desserts, so that costs a little bit of money. We've only met up how many times? And it's only been a couple months that we've known each other, so how many times is that? And how many times a month are we meeting up? And how many times have, you know... numbers in the back of my head, like, what the fuck? Has it really been a full $500? Or is he just pulling that number out of his ass? So, now, in retrospect, I finally sat down and did the math, because some guy, and I think this comment is actually still on YouTube, he was like, wait a minute, $500, if you multiply, you know, if you divide that by 11, that's, you know, 35 meals that he got for you, or some number like that. And I was like, wait a minute, he didn't spend a full $500 here. That's not possible, okay? So here's the math that I came up with. $500, you gotta take out money for the tip, because this is the US. Tips range anywhere from 10 to 20%. Let's say that he was mid-range, so we'll go 15%. So you multiply 500 by 0.15, you get $75. So $500 minus the tip, that's 500 minus 75. That's $425. You take $425, you multiply that by 0.5 to get half, and you end up with $212.50. You take $212.50 and you divide it by 11, and you get 19 meals. Now, that's not counting in desserts, which happens sometimes, and that's not counting in coffee or hot chocolate that I'd ordered or anything like that. So really, he wasn't buying me 35 meals. He was buying me closer to 13, 14, 15 meals-ish. Something in that range. Which, if it's been a few months and we're meeting up once or twice a week, that's, that's about how it works. So don't go thinking that he spent the full 500 on me. At most, he spent 250 on me because he was eating his food too, and I'm sorry, I am not responsible for the food that went into his stomach. Like, that's not money that I feel like I owe him anything for. Bare minimum if we're talking prostitution wise. Also, what woman in this economy is honestly worth 15 hamburgers? Like, even 19 hamburgers. What woman is worth just a handful of food? So anyway, that was the math when I finally sat down and did it. I think it was closer like 13-ish or 15-ish times, which is a lot. I mean, to be fair, that is a lot. But I hadn't been paying attention to the numbers. I was just trying to get out of the house and hang out with somebody. And this guy seemed like he wanted to hang out with me. And I thought we were friends. And there we go. But anyway, he's telling me that I owe him I owe him sex for all this. And it's like, let's be very, very clear here. If he had told me that I owed him for the next 15 to 20, let's say 20 at most, and 20 is definitely an overestimate here. Let's say that if I owed him for the next several meals, however many meals it was, if it was my job to cover it because he'd cover the first, however many, it'd be like, okay, cool, I can do that, Hey, this is getting a little bit pricey. I think you're going to have to start covering meals, or hey, do you want to start taking turns paying for the meals, or anything like that. Anything like that. I would have been like, sure. That's cool. The thing was, from day one, I offered to pay. He was like, oh no, I've got this. And so I was like, okay. A little while later, hey, do you want me to pay this time? No, I've got this. Okay. A little while later, shall I pay this time? No, I've got this. Okay. Now this is where the point where everybody gets mad at me. A lot of guys, including this most recent one, seem to think that I've been using this guy, that I was deliberately using him to get free meals. And when I say, no, I seriously thought this guy was a friend. Like, when he told me that I needed to prostitute myself to him, I was just like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, are you kidding me? You're joking, right? Tell me you're joking, because if you're not joking, I swear I'm gonna take this drink and I'm gonna throw it in your face. That's kind of where I was, because, like, I genuinely thought this guy was my friend, and I was a little bit pissed off. It was like, wait a minute, I thought we were friends. I thought you actually were hanging out with me because you liked me. Now I'm a little pissed off because it's becoming very clear to me that the only reason you were hanging out with me was because you wanted sex from me. Like, there was no element of friendship in any of this. There was no getting to know you, getting to be friends element in all of this. This was purely you trying to figure out the fastest way you could get your dick in a warm, wet, squishy hole. That's all you wanted from me. God. That's all I am to you. That's all I am to you. Okay, well, I'm sorry. I just lost any respect I ever had for you as a human being, dude. Like, that's just kind of where I was at that point. Like, he's telling me I need to prostitute myself off to him for some hamburgers and, maybe some desserts that came along with them. And it's like, okay, I am not that cheap. I have never been that cheap. I will never be that cheap. And I've figured you out now. You've shown me your true colors. You only ever wanted me for sex. That was the only reason you've ever been nice to me. And fuck you, dude. Fuck you. So anyway, that's where I am. And I tell this story, and people in the comments are all like, okay, you must have been lying. You must have known that he wanted sex from you. It's like, why would I think he wanted sex from me again? And I understand. I do get it. Men always want sex. That's all men want, okay? Men are constantly just after sex. I get it. Okay, I didn't really realize that at the time to the degree that I do now, but now it's kind of become a little bit more obvious to me that men are constantly after sex. The thing that I don't think I really understood at that point is that men are, like, even to this day, sometimes men aren't just after sex. I think the people who interact with me on these videos are actually trying to exchange ideas with me a lot of the time. They're not going to be able to screw me through the internet. Like, we're not going to have some sort of weird internet coitus. So there's not really any legitimate point in talking to me for the purposes of obtaining sex. At least not from me. Now, you can talk to me for the purposes of obtaining sex from women in the future. because that's kind of what we're talking about. We're talking about how to obtain sex from women in the future. Other women, women that you meet in the world. I'm clearly off the market, which hasn't stopped some men, which is always kind of weird. Like, dude, seriously, wedding ring and all that stuff. I mean, not that I have eczema. I'm sorry. But I mean, like, I guess it never dawned on me. It never occurred to me. Like, it really didn't. Like, I just did not think that was the only thing this guy was using me for. And here's the thing. Like, he never really gave any indications that he was after just sex. Like, I thought he seemed pretty mellow. He seemed pretty cool. He seemed like he just wanted to hang out. And then one day, just smack out of the blue, you owe me sex. Give me that sex. You owe me. It's like, where did this come from? So that was my experience of it. Guys in the comments section, of course, you must have known. You must have known. You were using this guy for free meals. You were using him. That poor, manipulated simp. You were mistreating that poor man. It's like, he wanted me to prostitute myself for some effing hamburgers. Are you kidding me? No. No. He is not the victim here. I'm sorry. This is ridiculous. You know, I thought we were buddies. I thought we were hanging out. Come on. So this has happened multiple times now. Only the most recent one is still in the comment section. For all I know, in a few months, that's going to disappear too. Because my comment section has turned into the world's biggest fucking hug box, which, I mean, I appreciate it, by the way. For everybody who's left nice comments, or just even interactive, like, idea kind of sharing kinds of comments, I'm so grateful. It's been a genuine and true joy to talk to all of you, and I really appreciate it. It just seems very foreign to me, the concept of me going into my comment section and not seeing, like, a bunch of insults from guys. Like, I have to get used to this. Like, I'm not used to comments without constantly being insulted by people. Like, that just doesn't happen for me, or at least it hasn't for a very long time. So there's a weirdness to it that I need to get myself accustomed to. But in the meantime, like, you can probably find that comments. But the thing is, we're just going back and forth in the comments, and it was really interesting. Like, I ended up repeating all the same arguments I'd already made. Like, look, he didn't spend a full $500 just on feeding me. Like, half of that was food that he ate, that he got to enjoy, that he got to order at a restaurant. So it's not like I was the sole beneficiary here. It's kind of like women who complain about having sex with men. Like, oh, well, you know, I gave him sex. It's like, yeah, but you got to have sex too. So what's the deal? What gives there? Like, you're getting the have fun, sexy time too. So then the other argument was, let's see, why didn't you stop him? If you weren't using him, why didn't you stop him from paying? It's like, look, I tried to stop him. I offered to pay multiple times. I have had experiences with guys, and this is something I need to go over yet again. There are guys in this world that I have gone out to restaurants with who get really, really offended if I try to pay the tab. They view it, and I am not making this up, they view it as an insult to their masculinity. And I have gotten into a physical altercation with one of these guys. I remember there was this guy, and we were sitting at the table. It was me and an ex-boyfriend of mine and a friend of mine. And we're sitting at the table, we're all hanging out, and the tab comes in, and I'd always been asking to pay the tab, and they were always like, no, we got it. Well, once we broke up, it just didn't seem right for me to be letting him pay, and so I grabbed the tab really quick, and I snatched it away from them, and I was like, ha! I got it this time. And so the other guy, his friend, who was kind of a friend of mine, it was this weird thing, like, he was dating one of the dancers, the friend, and he was like the bouncer, and so I worked with both of them. Anyway, he just reaches across the table, because he's this big bouncer dude, grabs me by the front of my hoodie, and lifts me up in the air by the front of my hoodie. And I looked at it and was like, dude, you are gonna fucking rip my hoodie, and I like this hoodie, so you know what, screw it, I don't care. You wanna pay? Fine, pay. You know, after that, it was just kind of like, okay. And I mean, there were so many incidents. Like, I don't remember them all because there were so many of them where guys just insisted on paying, and that was it. And that's something I think guys don't necessarily understand. Sometimes guys are a little bit weird about being the one in charge of things, and being the man, and being the leader, and paying the damn tab. And it's like, okay. So this guy was saying that I should have had those kinds of altercations, you know, grab by the front of the shirt kinds of altercations, and fought this guy and argue with this guy every single time we went out. He's saying that I should have threatened to stop hanging out with this guy if he didn't let me start paying the tab. Let's ignore the fact that I didn't have anyone else to hang out with, and I was pretty alone in my isolated little hometown, and I was trying, at the time, my main focus was get up, get out of the house, go hang out with somebody, go socialize, go act like a normal person so that you can make yourself less fucked up in the head. Like, that was my whole goal. That was what I was focused on. So it's like, why would I threaten to not hang out with a person when that's only keeping me farther away from my own personal goals? Like, why would I do that? In fact, the more I thought about all this, the more I kept on thinking, why would I do any of the things he's suggesting? And this is the point I want you guys to understand. There's two kind of basic things in this video I want y'all to know. Number one, why on earth would I put any effort into paying the bill? Why would I think to do that? It wasn't even why would I do that. It was why on earth would I think to do something like that? You know, my mom was I think, second wave feminist. She was the kind with the power suits and the business haircut and the idea that she was like just as tough as any man. And so that's what I grew up with. It's like, you got to be tough and you got to work hard and you got to pull your own weight and all this stuff. And so my mom, she was a very enlightened woman. She told me that I needed to offer to pay the bill, or offer to pay my half of the bill. You know, I had to offer. I was like, okay. So I'd offer and they'd say no. And I would argue with them sometimes, like, hey, don't you think it's my turn? You know, you did it last time. Shouldn't I have a chance? You know, it's only fair. And they do their whole masculine thing, like, oh no, I'm the man. It's the man's job. It's the man's duty, whatever. And so eventually become like, all right, fine, do your thing. I'm not going to fight you over it because I'm not a confrontational person. But it never really occurred to me to push it any farther than that. And guys are always like, well, how come it never occurred to you? And I think the problem is you guys who are saying, how come it never occurred to you, push it any farther than that, you're thinking like men. I'm not a man. I've never been a man. I don't think like a man. I definitely wasn't thinking like a man at that point in my life. I am a woman. I was raised in this society as a woman. A woman in this society rarely, if ever, takes the time to think about who's paying the bill at the restaurant. It's always the man. That's what men do. That's the way it is. That's what you're taught. That's what movies show you. That's what your parents teach you. That's what all your friends do. That's everything. That's how it works, you know? That's how it always works. And so, you know, I thought I was being very enlightened by offering to pay the bill. Like, hey, do you want me to get it this time? No, okay, all right, fine, cool. I'm not going to fight you on it. I thought I was being super duper enlightened. I had friends, not that they were really friends, we're using this term lightly. I had acquaintances who would like take guys on shopping trips and buy like tons and tons of clothes and then just look to him to pay the bill. Like, I thought that was using people. Because at that point, you're intentionally just getting stuff for yourself and then looking over at him like, okay, well, pay for it. I thought that was using people. Like, that seemed pretty using people-ish. I looked at going out and hanging out at the only restaurant that was open in town, like the only place to hang out in town, and it was kind of like, well, you know, I mean, what else are we going to do? It's not like any place else is open. It's not like we can't go to some bar. Like, I'd be a cheap date at a bar. I don't drink alcohol. It's like, you know, you order whatever drink you want and give me a water and I'm going to drive him home because he's going to be drunk. So everything's working. Like, you don't have to worry about paying for a taxi and you really don't have to worry about buying me drinks. And I'll be sitting there with my water and maybe even a little squeeze of lemon in there if they put a lemon wedge in there. And it's like, I'm cheap. I'm easy, you know? But there weren't any bars open because city regulations were that everything closed at 1 o'clock. So at 1 o'clock, that was it. There was nowhere else to hang out. There was nothing else to do. And so, you know, you want to hang out with somebody, it's either his house, which was way far away, or my house, which we did end up hanging out at one time. Like, it never occurred to me to think about the money. Like, people are like, oh, didn't it occur to you to keep track of just how many times he's buying these meals? It's like, no, it never occurred to me. And that's something I think you guys need to be aware of. As a woman, it doesn't occur to you to count how many meals he's bought you. That's not something that goes through our minds. That's not something we think about at all. I don't think any women out there are counting down the meals that a guy has spent on them. We're not looking at the money aspect of things, or at least I wasn't. And I don't think many women are. Anyway, so that's the first thing. Like, I'm trying to figure out ways to explain this to you that are going to be really clear and really easy to understand, because it's a concept that took me a while to wrap my head around. Women are fed blue pills the same way men are fed blue pills. You know, men are given these weird blue pills where it's like, oh, you got to pay for things, and you got to be a man and support her, and you got to man up and raise that baby, even if it's not your own, because, you know, she needs a man to take care of her, and that's your job, that's your duty, that's your responsibility. Those are the blue pills men are fed. They're not healthy. They're kind of stupid sometimes, but that's what men are told. Well, women are being told blue pills all the time too. Women grow up on a steady diet of blue pill thinking. Blue pill for women is different than blue pill for men. We're told different things. And blue pill is a lot easier for women to swallow. Women love blue pill these days because blue pill is basically a little pat on the head and, oh, you're perfect, honey. Everything you do is wonderful. Your farts smell like roses, sweetheart. You are a powerful, independent woman. And that man, he needs to pay for everything you need him to pay for, including that baby that you got knocked up with by some other guy. Yeah, that's what women are told. Women are told this. And so women go around in the world believing this. And so, you know, there's the overt logic of it. Like, I was told that you should pay, therefore you should pay. I am using you for food. And then there's the subtle kind of undercurrent of logic with it where there's so much social structure reinforcing this mindset. I wouldn't call it like an active entitlement. It's more of an undercurrent where it's like, well, of course the man pays. So, I mean, I can offer to pay and I can ask to pay. And I think I'm being really, really enlightened by saying, hey, can I pay too? Because, you know, I'm trying to pull my own weight and, you know, do my fair share and do all the things I was taught to do by my mom. But, you know, when guys with a blue pill mindset are like, no, 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 I'm the man, it's my job to pay, you know, I just go with it. It never occurs to me to look at how many times the guy is paying for a meal and say, that's not right. It never occurs. And it never occurs to most women, I think. Most women have no reason to question it. Because we're questioning the framework of the world that we've grown up in. Everybody that I had known, every guy that I had hung out with before that point, they always insisted on paying. There were a few guys where it was like, hey, I'll pay this time, you pay next time. And I was like, that's great, let's do that. You know, I was cool with that. I had guys that I would go out with and it was like, okay, yeah, I got last time, so now it's my turn, right? Or you got last time, so now it's my turn. Okay, I got last time, so now it's your turn. Cool. You know, I did that. I was cool with that. I really liked that because it's like, okay, we're on level footing. It's very egalitarian. This works for me. You know, you have a job, I have a job. We're both adults. We're both responsible. Everything's good. But when guys are insisting on paying, it's like, you know, why should I buck the system and fight them over it? Why should I aggressively attempt to stop them from it? Like, there were so many guys who were commenting, like, didn't you realize after he bought more than 10 meals in a row for you? No, I didn't. Women don't notice these things. We don't realize this. Why should we? Why should we? Every single guy I'd ever known up until that point insisted on paying. When you go out on a date with a woman, she's not thinking, for the most part, she's not thinking, all right, if this guy buys me the meal this many times, he's probably going to be wanting something at the end of it. They don't think that. Now, maybe older women, more experienced women, you get some good little church girl who's never really gone on dates except for, like, the kind of experiences that I'd had. And it's like, oh, okay, well, you're going to pay. All right, fine, you know. Do you want me to pay? No? Okay, all right, cool. Like, you get someone who's really submissive, who's used to being told what to do and just doing what they're told, which is me. And you have a guy who insists that he's going to pay. It's like, okay, I'm not going to fight you. I'm not aggressive. I'm not going to fight you. You're in charge. this is the situation you end up with. And women will not, particularly young women, particularly inexperienced women, they don't look at it that way. I do realize, and a lot of guys have brought this to my attention, there are a lot of women in the world who will expect a guy to pay for them so that they can get a free meal. And they'll only get on dates with guys so they can get free meals. It's like they become like these serial daters where it's like they're going out for a free meal. Okay, that was fun. They go out with another guy for another free meal. Okay, that was fun. Now they go out with a guy for drinks because the drinks are free. That was fun. They go out for, I get that. But, yeah, like, he was okay. He seemed pretty laid back. He seemed pretty mellow. He seemed like he was kind of fun to hang out with. And it was like, okay, cool. I made a friend. That's where your mindset stops if you're a woman. So it's weird to me that all these guys are like, well, why didn't you insist on paying? Didn't it seem a little weird to you that he was paying so many times? No. When you're a woman, it doesn't seem weird to you. Not all women, obviously. Some women are a little more aware. But there are a lot of women out there in the world who really don't think about it. It's like, well, of course you're going to pay. You're the man, right? That's what you do, right? You pay. This is what the blue pill mindset is for women. It takes a while to really break out of that mode of thinking. It takes some time. You have to kind of work at it. It doesn't happen overnight. It definitely doesn't happen when you're young unless something really whacks you out of it violently. So, for all you guys who are looking at it and saying, why weren't you more suspicious? You really didn't realize this? You really didn't realize this? No, I really didn't realize this. And you have to be aware that women aren't going to realize this. So when you're interacting with a woman, when you're going out on dates with women, when you're buying dinner for a woman, just remember, she's not paying attention to how much money you're spending, gentlemen. She's not. She doesn't care about the money that you're spending. I mean, some women, they're like, oh, he spent so much money on me. Then they feel happy and they feel treated and they feel very grand and fluffed, but they're not paying attention to the actual dollar value. They're not making it some sort of cumulative thing like, oh, he did this for me and he did that for me. And they're not looking at it as some sort of debt that they're racking up. It's like, okay, I deserve all this. There's an entitlement element to it. There definitely is. And I mean, you can argue that I had that entitlement element too. And I honestly think if my mother hadn't raised me saying, you need to go halfsies at the very least, or you need to pay sometimes. You need to carry your share. You need to do your part. You need to contribute your portion. If my mom hadn't been telling me that growing up, then I really never would have questioned it. Any girl that you go out on a date with, what in her world is ever going to give her even a moment's hesitation or a moment's pause to ask why you're paying for the meal? There's nothing there. There's nothing to cause her to do that. Unless her parents taught her to, or unless she had a really bad experience, like some guy said he spent $500 on her, and so now she needs to prostitute herself to him because that'll really wake a girl up. Unless that happens, she's not gonna know. And she's not gonna think about it. So that's the first thing. That's the first big thing. Alright, it is later and I have more time to make the rest of this video. We are on the second part of what you should be learning from my situation with the $500 man. I am aware that many of you will probably be frothing at the mouth after listening to the first part and reading that as, so basically you felt entitled to it and that means you're not sorry. No, that's not the real reason I'm not sorry. I just think it's important for you guys to know about that because not all girls are going to realize that your only goal in talking to them is to get sex out of them, especially if they're meeting men who, might not have that be their only goal. But that's not the reason I'm not going to apologize for $500 man. The reason I'm not going to apologize for $500 man is actually something called a covert contract. If you don't know about it, I will tell you a brief explanation of it, and if you want to learn anything more about it, there is a lovely book called No More Mr. Nice Guy by a man by the name of Dr. Robert Glover. I suggest you take the time to read it. If you need to know what a covert contract is, if you find yourself listening to this definition and thinking, that might be me, definitely pick that book up and give it a read because there is a lot of information in that book that might be really valuable to you. A covert contract is a wonderful way to guarantee that you will not get laid. And what happens is a man actually not even a man, let's say it's person A. We'll make it as amorphous as possible. Person A wants something from person B. Let's say it's Y. Person A wants Y from person B. And so they say, if I give person B X, not the drug ecstasy, but, just the letter X. If I give them X, they are going to eventually give me Y in exchange for it. And so, this isn't just something that happens in the sexual marketplace. You hear about in the sexual marketplace, but it also happens in the workplace. Person A wants a promotion. They never mention that they want the promotion. They never tell their boss they want the promotion. They never apply much for the promotion or try to talk about getting the promotion or ask their boss what they actually need to do to get the promotion. They just decide, if I come into work early every single day, I bet I'll get a promotion, because they really want a promotion. And so they come into work early every single day, and they think that's going to get them the promotion. Or maybe more than that. They come into work early every single day, and they also help other people with their work in some way. I never worked in an office. I was a stripper. So they do all this stuff, and the time for this promotion comes around, and their boss gives it to somebody else. And they're sitting there, and they're absolutely enraged. Like, why didn't I get the promotion? I should have gotten the promotion. I came in early to work every single day, and I helped my fellow coworkers with, their own jobs that they could have done themselves, but I was helping them out. I did all this extra stuff, and I didn't even get that promotion. I deserved that promotion. I earned that promotion. And they're all angry. And if they were to actually go to their boss and talk about it, which I don't know how many of them do, they would find out that their boss chose to promote this other guy because the other guy was interested in it, came to the boss, said, what do I need to get this promotion? What do I need to do? What skills do I need to have? And then that other person worked to get those skills and earn that promotion. I'm a little fuzzy on how promotions work, but this is kind of the idea that I have in mind. So it does happen in a workplace, but the way you hear about covert contracts the most is in the sexual marketplace. And a perfect example of that would be my interactions with the $500 guy. He was a classic example of a nice guy, and I realized that more and more after sitting there and thinking about it and also arguing with multiple men about it. This guy was your quintessential nice guy. We're going out and he's buying me dinner and he's telling me, don't worry about it. I've got the check. Don't worry about it. This is my manly duty. I am a gentleman. I am a nice guy. This is how things work. And I took him at his word. This is what he said to me. Therefore, this is what I am aware of. This is what I know. And so this is the information that I am operating on. He says he is a gentleman and a nice guy, and he feels that it is his duty to pay for the food. This is the information that he has supplied to me. However, he had a covert contract that he probably wrote up very close to the beginning of our relationship, if not at the extreme beginning, like the very first time we went out for food and started talking. And the covert contract went like this. I bet that girl's going to have sex with me if I buy her dinner. And so that was what he was hoping for. Everything else was just superficial. He was being nice to me. He was talking to me. He was pretending to be interested in the things I had to say. All of this was a lie that he was telling me because he wanted to have sex with me. And you're probably sitting there thinking, well, duh. But this is the insidious thing about covert contracts. He wanted to have sex with me, but he wasn't going to tell me that, and he wasn't going to let me know. He wasn't going to indicate that in any way. He was just going to think it to himself. And then he was going to assume that I knew what he wanted. He assumed I knew what he wanted, and he started giving me things. And the whole time he's giving me this impression that he's a very nice guy. What a nice guy I am. What a gentleman I am. What an honorable man I am. And the whole time He's basically counting up this debt that he's building up for me, that he's never informed me about, that he's never informed me that I should be paying attention to in any way, and given the culture that we lived in, there was no reason for me to be paying attention to it. He's racking up this imaginary debt inside of his head. And then at some point, he drops the other half of the contract in my lap. Plop! You owe me sex. Now, you might be looking at it and saying, okay, well, you did kind of owe him something at that point. But that's not the experience that I ended up having with this guy. He's doing a nice thing for me. He's doing a nice thing for me. He's doing a nice thing for me. He's hanging out with me. He's talking with me. I have every reason to believe that he is my friend. And then suddenly, he makes a demand of me that is a pretty damn high demand. Out of the blue, he demands it. He insists that I owe it to him. And it immediately becomes very clear to me that every single nice thing he was doing up to this point, none of it was real. None of it was genuine. And none of it was nice. And that's why women don't like nice guys. When women encounter a nice guy, as soon as we figure it out, we want to get away from that guy. Because nice guys are not actually nice. Nice guys are toxic, and they exhibit toxic relationship habits. This is one of the very toxic relationship habits that nice guys regularly exhibit. You think they're simply being nice. You get lulled into this sense of calm and happiness with them because they're just this nice guy, they're pleasant, they're easy to get along with, everything is going smoothly, and then all of a sudden they throw something at you. Usually it's a demand of a sexual nature, and it's like, okay, hold on. You weren't doing any of those nice things in a genuine fashion. You were just trying to manipulate me. You are a manipulative bastard, and this is the reaction women always have. This is the reaction that a lot of people have. So the boss, who maybe this going back to the metaphor of the boss here, maybe the boss was really happy that this guy was coming into work early and was really praising him for coming into work early because, you're such a good employee, you're such a good worker. I wish everybody would follow your example. Every time you come into work early, things just run smoother. I really appreciate it. He's praising the guy for doing all these nice things. But the moment the guy pulls out the, wait a minute, you owed me that promotion, the boss is sitting there going, okay, hold on a minute. Now, I understand in a work environment it's a little bit different because everybody's getting paid to do their job, but it's still the same hold up there. So you're telling me that all these nice things that you did that were helping us all out, they weren't really that nice, were they? This is always the reaction that happens with a covert contract. You hardly ever see a covert contract turn out smoothly. They don't work that way. Because nobody ever makes the deal that's on the other side of the covert contract. Nobody ever agreed to this. And the really sad thing is covert contracts happen because the nice guy is looking at it and saying, I am very afraid that she will reject me sexually. And so instead of telling her that I want her sexually, I'm just going to do all these nice things and maybe she'll eventually feel grateful enough that she'll have sex with me. The thing is, when he drops the demand, after enough time has passed and he hasn't just gotten the thing that he automatically thinks she should know to give him, when that happens and he makes his demand, it's not a confident approach to a sexual relationship, and it's not even a healthy approach to a sexual relationship. Sex is something that is given freely. It is not something that is ever owed. And if you try to make me feel like I owe you sex, I am going to feel like you are being predatory and manipulative. Neither of which I am going to like, and neither of which any woman is going to like. If you go online and you look up articles about covert contracts, they will tell you that it is not the woman's fault for failing to honor your covert contract that you wrote up inside your own head. Even if you think, well, she should just know what I want. No, she shouldn't. Because women are not mind readers. No one is a mind reader. People are not psychic. That's why the only contracts that ever should be honored are contracts that are agreed upon beforehand by both parties. In the case of $500 guy, there was no way I was ever going to give that man sex. And if he had communicated to me that he was interested in sex, yes, he would have gotten rejected, but then he would have gotten rejected before wasting $500 in this wild goose chase that he set up for himself without ever letting me know. This was a mess I place squarely at his feet because I had no way of knowing what he wanted from me. And yes, you might be looking and saying you really seriously didn't know what his intentions were. And here's the dangerous thing with this entire situation. If I was a con artist, and this is, I think, the reason so many men get mad at me. If I was a con artist, all I'd have to do is just tweak the conversation and manipulate him just enough to give him the impression that maybe if he did give me some more food and buy me some more meals and do a little bit more for me, then he might just get that sex. And then at some point, when he finally said, well, what about that sex we were going to have? I could just kind of laugh and say, oh, I never promised you sex, and then dance off with all the free stuff he'd given me. This is how con artists operate. But at the same time, and it is important to make this distinction, if the woman is not leading the guy on deliberately, if she's not hinting that he could have sex if he just behaved himself a little better and gave her a little bit more money, if she's not playing mind games, and if she's approaching him in good faith, then it's not a con artist. He feels conned. That's the nature of a covert contract. At the end of it, when he's honored his side of the contract and he expects her to honor hers, if she doesn't go through with her side of the contract because she looks at it and said, I never agreed to that, which she never agreed to that, that man is going to feel really, really conned. He's going to feel abused. He's going to feel manipulated. He's going to feel mistreated. He's going to feel used. This is where the nice guy comes from. The whole time, while he's building up his side of the contract, she's telling him what a nice guy he is because he's being so nice to her. And then when he springs the other half of the contract on her, like some really nasty surprise, hey, you owe me sex now, she's going to be like, okay, whoa, you're not a nice person after all. I'm going to leave and I'm not going to come back because you're unpleasant and you're manipulative and you're nasty. And then he's going to feel used and manipulated. And he's only going to have what she said to him to go on, and what she said to him right up until this point is, you're such a nice guy. 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 Hell no, I won't give you sex. And then she runs the other way, and he doesn't understand why. This is one of the reasons that they keep having covert contracts, because if it was self-evident that you shouldn't form covert contracts with people, these guys wouldn't keep doing it. Unfortunately, if no one sits down and explains to you, look, that girl who's sitting across the table from you right now, and sometimes it's these guys' wives. Sometimes it's the wife. I took out the garbage, honey. Are you going to give me sex, honey? Why aren't you going to give me sex, honey? I took out the garbage. This happens all the time. If no one sits and explains to you, like takes the time to say, hey, look, that girl's sitting on the other side of the table. She's talking with you. She's eating the food you bought. She's having a great time. She's enjoying your company. She doesn't know what you want from her. You haven't made that clear to her. And I know it's scary to make it clear to her in some way or another. And you definitely wouldn't want to be too overt about it because that might drive her off too. But if you don't make your intentions and your goals clear to another person, they aren't going to read your mind. They're not going to have that you should have known moment. That's not how human beings work. We aren't psychic. And so that girl sitting across the table from you, not me, some other girl that you're going out on a date with, that you're hoping is going to have sex with you, she doesn't know. She has an entire social system built around her to prevent her from figuring it out. This whole social system that tells her that you should be doing exactly what you're doing, that's probably also telling you that you should be doing exactly what you're doing too. She doesn't know. she has no clue what you want from her. If you don't tell her, if you don't make it clear and obvious to the other person in a relationship what you want from them and what you expect from them, they do not know. You can safely assume it. Sometimes people are very good at guessing things, but generally speaking, the safest assumption is that unless something is spoken, it is not known. This is a good general rule in relationships. This is a rule that my husband and I have. We talk to each other. We tell each other what we want. If we don't tell each other what we want, the other person cannot assume my husband doesn't know what I want until I tell him. He can't make that assumption. He's not a mind reader. I'm not a mind reader. This is how people operate. And it's a very scary thing I understand it's a very scary thing for a nice guy to come out and say, I want to have sex with you. I don't necessarily even recommend you say it in as many words all at once like that. You flirt with her, you learn some game, you figure out how to kind of indicate your interest. That's what flirting is. It's the entire art of basically saying, look, I really want to fuck you. But you say it in a nicer way than that so the other person isn't immediately put off by the suddenness of your approach. It's the same thing with Kino, the sudden surprise kiss that almost always turns out badly, or at least for me, I've never had a surprise kiss from a guy that I barely know that has turned out well. It's always me just fighting desperately to get their face away from mine. It's because they launched it all too early at me. It's like, okay, I didn't know you were interested, and now I do, and I'm really not ready for this. Covert contracts, this is a mess. And it's a mess that the person who builds the covert contract is building by themselves. People who build covert contracts are displaying toxic relationship behavior. They are doing this by themselves. It might not feel like it, but you cannot, in any reasonable way, expect another person to read your intentions, to sense what you want, to automatically understand your expectations. This is unreasonable and unrealistic. And so when I look at the situation with $500 guy, it's like, look, I didn't know what that guy wanted from me. I think I was pretty honest and pretty clear with him when I was communicating with him. I thought that I was doing a pretty good job of relaying my own intentions to him, which was, hey, let's be friends, let's hang out, let's talk, let's have fun. That was what I was thinking. That's where my mind was. And I wasn't saying anything otherwise to suggest to him that anything else was going to happen. So when he suddenly told me he expects and demands sex from me, which is not something I'm just going to hand out to any old random person, I realized that he was not a good person for me to be around. He was not a nice person. I was terribly offended, and I felt, and I think this is a reasonable thing to assume after his behavior, that he was attempting to manipulate me and coerce me into doing something that I did not want to do. So there you go. I'm not going to apologize for that. That's a mess he made. And you might not feel like that's a mess he made. And if you really, really do not feel like that is a mess he made, please go pick up Dr. Glover's book, No More Mr. Nice Guy. Read it. He wrote it for you to make your life better, to make sex more accessible to you, to make you a happier, healthier person. Please go read the book. Because if I haven't given you a strong enough understanding of why I shouldn't apologize to that man, that is a book that you probably need to read and would benefit from. Anyway, it is getting late. Once again, I've been talking for forever. And next week, I got a letter from a gentleman about some dating questions he had. So I'm going to go through that letter. I'm going to try and figure out what to talk about from it. And that's going to be our video for next week. Until then, I will talk to you guys later.